Today we're dissecting a script for a political commentary video, Candace Goes Nuclear.
Right?
It's analyzing the feud between Candace Owens and Graham Allen, centered on that Catholic Champion Award. So let's just get right into the first friction, the ad integration. The most glaring structural issue here is that the placement of the sponsorship segment just actively sabotages the narrative arc.
Okay, sabotages, how so?
Well, the weakness is this severe case of tonal whiplash. The script spends the first 4 minutes building this very specific atmosphere.
Righteous indignation.
Exactly. You're hearing these heavy words, evil demonic attacks, suicide tweets, and then, pedophilia allegations aimed at Graham Allen. The audience is being primed for a moral crusade.
You're supposed to be angry.
You are. And then, with absolutely zero buffer, the host pivots to this super high-energy, casual endorsement of masa chips.
Talking about dipping churros in Nutella. I remember that part.
Yes. It's not just awkward, it actually trivializes the whole widow defense narrative that they just spent minutes building up. You can't ask a listener to feel rage and hunger in the same breath. It just doesn't work.
Okay, but I want to push back on that. Just lately, we know from YouTube analytics that retention plummets during ad reads.
Sure.
So isn't there an argument that placing the ad right there, at the peak of emotional tension, that cliffhanger moment, is actually the smartest move to get conversions? You're basically holding the audience hostage with the drama to sell chips.
That is the standard marketing playbook. I get that. But in this specific context, I think it backfired.
Why?
But here, the abrupt shift, it just breaks the suspension of disbelief. It signals to the listener that the host's outrage might be performative.
So if you can switch from defending a widow to eating chocolate hummets that fast, do you actually care about the widow?
Precisely. It makes the demonic accusations feel more like entertainment fodder and not a serious moral stand. If the host doesn't take the transition seriously, why should the listener take the content serious?
That's a fair point.
So the suggestion here is to create a kind of narrative airlock. You need a transitional bridge that acknowledges the shift before you try to sell something.
Okay, so what does that actually look like?
Well, here's a concrete way to fix it. You need a cooling down. Before the ad, you insert a line like, look, this topic is incredibly draining, and the toxicity of these tweets is enough to spike anyone's blood pressure.
Acknowledging the mood.
Yes, that's why sometimes we need to step back. It acknowledges the viewer's emotional state before you pivot. Or, an even easier fix is to just move the ad.
Where to?
Put it in the Ben Shapiro segment later in the script. That part is described as hilarious, which is a much, much better tonal match for churros than a segment on pedophile accusations.
That Shapiro placement. Yeah, that feels way more organic. It keeps the entertainment vibe with the entertainment and the moral vibe with the moral argument.
Exactly. You're not jerking the audience back and forth. Now, let's look at the foundation of the argument itself, the whole inciting incident. The argument, as I understand it, is that Graham Allen is defending a widow, Erica Kirk, but the narrative assumes way too much prior knowledge about how this fight even started.
It just drops you in.
It starts in media res, in the middle of the action, but without establishing the player. We jump straight to Graham Allen calling Candace unhinged. We hear about Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk, a murder investigation.
And the average listener hears Charlie Kirk.
And thinks of the Turning Point USA founder.
Of course.
But the script is talking about a different, deceased Charlie Kirk. And because that distinction isn't made immediately, the listener spends the first 5 minutes just confused.
I have to admit, I found myself pausing to Google, is Charlie Kirk dead while I was reading this. So yeah, is the connection between the murder conspiracy and Graham Allen's defense really established early enough?
I think the listener is definitely playing catch-up. If they don't know who Erica is or why Candace is investigating a death, the stakes of Graham's defense are just completely lost.
It's like the script assumes everyone is already in the group chat.
But they're not. Most people are just tuning in. So the suggestion is to front-load the context. You need a rapid-fire, state-of-play preamble, orient the listener before you try to radicalize them.
So an actionable example?
Yeah, it would be like the 30-second block, right at the top. It could sound something like this. For those new to this feud, Candace Owens has been investigating the death of a man named Charlie Kirk, not the Turning Point founder, but a mutual friend, alleging foul play. This has prompted Graham Allen to step in and defend Charlie's widow, Erica.
That one sentence clears up the which Charlie confusion instantly. It anchors the whole conflict.
It does. And another concrete step is to just linearize the timeline. Right now, the script bounces all over the place.
It's hard to follow the sequence of events.
It needs to be explicitly stated. Step 1, Candace attacks the widow. Step 2, Graham defends the widow. Step 3. Candace retaliates by calling Graham a pedophile. Laying out that cause and effect chain validates the host's entire position that Graham is the victim here.
And it frames the pedophile accusation as a clear retaliation, not just some random insult out of the blue. It gives the argument much more weight.
Speaking of insults and escalation, let's look at the rhetoric the hosts themselves are using. The material makes a strong case for Graham Allen being the sane one, but the script's own reliance on really hyperbolic insults, it weakens the moral high ground the authors are trying to claim.
So there's a disconnect.
A big one. The weakness is a discrepancy between goal and execution. The script wants to frame Candace Owens as unhinged and the authors as these objective, sane observers.
Okay.
But then the script uses phrases like sick demon, garbage, freaking liberal, and most concerningly, there's a segment where the host is talking about pedophiles and says they need to be put in wood chippers.
Wow.
And while, yes, technically they're referring to pedophiles in the abstract, it's in the same breath as discussing their political enemies. It mirrors the exact chaotic, violent energy they are critiquing in Owens.
So is there a risk that by focusing on that kind of name-calling, they're actually obscuring the factual debunking they're trying to do?
I think so.
If I hear a host talking about wood chippers, do I stop listening to their logic and just start thinking they sound as angry as the person they're attacking?
That is the danger. You become what you behold. If you call someone a sick demon for being mean, you have ceded the argument that you're the nice one. It becomes a race to the bottom, not a critique from above.
But couldn't you argue that fighting fire with fire is the brand here? If the host acts too polite, do they look weak compared to Candace? The audience might be here for that aggression.
There's a difference between aggression and hypocrisy, though. If your thesis is Candace is a demon because she is mean, you cannot be a demon back. It cancels out your own argument. The goal should be to make the audience feel superior to Owens, not identical to her.
So the suggestion is, what, tone it down?
It's to adopt a show, don't tell approach. Let the opponent's own words be the primary source of their discredit, not the host's adjectives.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, for an actionable example, instead of calling Owens a sick demon right after reading her tweet, just pause.
Silence.
Exactly. Read her tweet aloud, keep your young kids away from Graham Allen, and just let it hang in the air for a sec. That silence is often more damning than any insult because it forces the audience to sit with how absurd the statement is on its own.
That is a powerful technique. And what about that wood chipper comment? That seems particularly risky.
I would replace that entirely. It's too violent and it detracts from the point. Instead, you can have a factual rebuttal of the pedophile accusation tack. You can note the shift in political language, how the go-to insult morphed from racist to Nazi, and now to pedophile.
So you're analyzing the strategy.
Yes, keep the analysis focused on the strategy of the insults, not the punishment of the insulter. That makes the host sound like a media analyst, not a guy shouting in a bar.
That elevates the whole discourse for sure. So moving on from rhetoric to evidence, let's talk about how the script handles that.
Okay, so the integration of that Lisa Knows debunking segment feels really disjointed from the main host's voice.
Lisa Knows, the small account.
Right. The weakness is that the script outsources the heavy lifting of the factual rebuttal. It relies on a clip from this account to explain all the details about Erica Kirk's drinking and dating history.
And the transition is weak.
Very. And then there's also a new entrant. It just breaks the host's authority. The host stops being the expert and becomes like a curator of other people's content.
I wonder if the evidence from Lisa would be more powerful if it was just synthesized into the host's own argument. By playing the clip, are we asking the audience to trust a stranger, Lisa, instead of the host they came to hear?
Yes. It feels a bit like saying, well, I didn't do the research, but this lady did.
The host is ceding the floor at the most critical factual juncture.
Voice of truth. So the suggestion is pretty straightforward. Synthesize the facts from Lisa Knows into the main narrative. The host needs to own the truth.
So how do you do that without, stealing her work?
It's easy. Instead of quoting Lisa saying, I don't drink is not the same as I have never drank, the host should just state this directly.
As their own finding.
Yes, the script should say, we have uncovered evidence that Erica dated Tyler Massey in 2015, which directly contradicts the claim that she never dated. State it as a fact of the show. It makes the host sound investigative and authoritative.
It does.
And you can still credit the source, but do it visually. Use the Lisa Knows clip as a visual citation on screen.
So show the video playing with no audio.
Or show the screenshots Lisa found While the host summarizes the rage bait propaganda statistic, the host points out the 300,000 likes. The host explains the discrepancy. This keeps narrative control and the pacing tight.
That's very clearly laid out. It keeps the rhythm of the host's voice consistent. Now, speaking of consistency, I was really struck by the ending.
Yes, that brings us to the conclusion. There's a key theme of, confusion about the appropriate way to handle the antagonist.
It sends mixed messages.
Very mixed message. That's the weakness. First, the script criticizes Tucker Carlson. It calls him a coward, specifically because he refuses to name Candace Owens while he's refuting her claim. The script is demanding direct confrontation.
Right. Name names.
But then, just moments later, it praises Ben Shapiro for a Valentine's tribute where he uses the hard R, the word retarded, to insult. The script literally says, I love that word's back.
Oh.
The moral framework just shifts incredibly fast from, we need serious investigation, to juvenile slurs are hilarious.
That is fascinating. So does praising the hard R insult undermine their earlier critique of Candace's vile language? I mean, if Candace is vile for her insults, why is Ben perfect for his?
It creates a double standard that any astute listener is going to pick up on immediately. It suggests the show isn't against nastiness in general. It's only against nastiness directed at their side. It completely muddies the waters of the moral argument.
So what's the fix?
The suggestion is to align the conclusion around a consistent theme, something like courage in communication, rather than just the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Okay, so how do we strengthen that?
You could frame the Tucker Carlson segment as the passive approach, and the Ben Shapiro segment as the aggressive approach, and then you explicitly compare the effectiveness of both. It makes it an analysis of strategy, not just cheering for your team.
That makes sense. But what about the slur itself? If the show's stance is, free speech absolutism, can't they support the use of the word while still criticizing Candace's specific lies?
They can, but it's the glee that's the problem. If the goal is to claim moral superiority over Owens, and remember, they called her a demon for her behavior, you have to reconsider the enthusiastic endorsement of that specific slur.
So dial back the I love that word's back part.
I would. The suggestion here is to praise Shapiro's willingness to fight back without explicitly endorsing the use of the hard R, or at least frame it as a fighting fire with fire tactic to acknowledge the tonal shift. The way it is now just sounds giddy about the slur, which feels really immature next to the devout Catholic defense they were mounting earlier.
It definitely feels like the script wants it both ways. It wants to be the virtuous defender of a widow, but also the edgy internet troll. And that dissonance is going to lose the audience who came for the Catholic defense.
Correct. And speaking of the Catholic defense, let's circle back to the Catholic champion narrative, which is where this whole script began. The argument about Carrie Prejean's Catholic Champion Award is the opening hook, but it gets totally diluted by everything that follows.
It gets lost.
Carrie Prejean getting this award while being advised by priests despite the host's disapproval. It's a strong thematic hook. It sets up a contrast between appearance and reality.
But then it just vanishes.
Completely lost as the script spirals into the Graham Allen drama. The connection between the cult of Candace and the Catholic award becomes very loose, and by the end, it's forgotten. It's like introducing a Chekhov's gun in the first act, but never firing it.
So, building on that, what if we looked at the award as a symptom of that larger cult issue instead of just a standalone grievance? If the script comes back to it, does that tie the whole package together?
It absolutely would. The suggestion is to thread that Catholic theme all the way through to the end of the script.
So, an example of that.
When they're discussing the demon comments later on, when Candace calls Graham a demon, you call back to the priest from the beginning. You ask the question, would the priests advising Carrie approve of these demonic accusations? Is this what a Catholic champion looks like?
That connects the beginning to the middle beautifully. It forces the audience to measure Candace's actions against the very standard she's associated with.
Exact. And you can use that Catholic Champion Award as a framing device for the entire episode. You contrast fake Catholicism, which the host would associate with Carrie and Candace seeking awards, against the true virtue they see in Erica, the widow, and Graham, the defender.
So you frame the whole thing as a battle for the soul of that faith.
Right. Not just a Twitter spat. It elevates the gossip into a real narrative about values. So, looking at the piece as a whole, it has strong energy and a very clear stance. It's passionate, it's defensive of its subjects, but it needs better structural pacing around the ads, a much clearer timeline for new listeners, and a consistent tone that doesn't undercut its own moral arguments with, excessive name-calling.
Okay, so let's recap the actionable points for the listener.
First, add a transition buffer before that masa chips ad. Don't go from suicide to snacks without a bridge. That emotional whiplash hurts your credibility.
Second, explain the Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk context before the Graham Allen reaction. Clear up that identity confusion immediately so the audience knows the stakes.
Third, tone down the wood chipper rhetoric. You can't claim the moral high ground while using violent imagery. Show us why she's wrong. Don't just call her name.
Fourth, synthesize the Lisa knows facts into the main script so the host retains authority. Don't outsource your biggest rebuttal.
And finally, align the conclusion. Don't praise slurs while condemning insult. Focus on the strategy of the counterattack, not the vocabulary.
I think that's a really solid set of revisions.
We would love to see how this script evolves. Please smooth out that narrative flow and resubmit the work for another round of feedback. We are really looking forward to seeing how these changes tighten up the argument. That does it for this critique. Keep writing and keep refining.